Welcome to SOC Minute Weekly, where we break down the cybersecurity stories that mattered most this week and what they mean for defenders.
This week, trusted infrastructure is under pressure from several directions: actively exploited flaws, social engineering that moves from inboxes to phones, and security gaps appearing as AI becomes part of both attacker workflows and enterprise access.
We'll also look at ransomware, major data exposures, and a cyber attack disrupting port operations. It's a busy week, so let's begin at the network edge. Cisco says, a high-severity flaw in secure firewall ASA and threat defense VPN software is being actively exploited to remotely crash affected devices. An availability bug on edge infrastructure can become a serious operations problem very quickly.
And the confirmed impact matters. This is denial of service, not reported code execution or data access. But if the firewall or VPN falls over, remote access and part of the network boundary may disappear with it.
So, who actually has these devices exposed? And would the SOC recognize an attack as more than routine instability? Review unexplained reloads, VPN interruptions, and unusual traffic around those times.
Device health telemetry may be as important as traditional alerts here. The practical challenge is making sure an outage on security infrastructure reaches analysts with enough threat context to investigate it. That visibility problem becomes more serious with vCenter. CVE 2026-59310 is a 9.8 directory traversal flaw that has been actively exploited for remote code execution against a central virtualization management plane. Which means the concern extends beyond one appliance. We shouldn't assume what happened after access, but code execution on vCenter can create a route toward the virtual environment it manages. Reconcile every vCenter instance with its exposure, owner, version, and patch status. Then correlate appliance logs with network telemetry, especially unexpected outbound connections and activity near known exploitation attempts. Encoded paths in a proxy log aren't enough by themselves. The useful context is traffic actually targeting vCenter, the timing, and any abnormal behavior on the appliance afterward. SharePoint has another unauthenticated path, CVE 2026-55040, reported as remote code execution affecting Subscription Edition 2019 and 2016. Valid credentials may not be required for an attacker to gain administrative control. The exploit development work was significantly assisted by an AI agent, but that shouldn't overshadow the vulnerability. It doesn't mean an autonomous agent independently compromised SharePoint servers. Identify exposed servers and correlate inbound activity with command execution, new administrative operations, and configuration changes. Failed login noise may be absent if authentication is bypassed. That makes host processes and network telemetry especially valuable. Patching closes the path going forward. It doesn't answer whether someone reached the server before the fix. ShieldBreak changes the incident shape again. This Microsoft Defender Zero Day is described as allowing an attacker who already has a foothold to reach system privileges on an affected machine. So, it isn't initial access based on the information available, but turning the endpoint protection stack into a privilege escalation path gives an existing attacker extremely powerful local control. Look for unusual process trees involving Defender components, unexpected child processes, and privilege changes driven by a low-privilege process or unfamiliar account context. Defender runs with high privilege by design, so ordinary product activity can't be the detection rule. Sequence and initiating context matter, and the reporting doesn't claim active exploitation in the wild. SAP Commerce Cloud presents a more urgent distinction. A maximum severity remote code execution flaw was patched, and diffused reported active exploitation only days later. First, determine which Commerce Cloud deployments are in scope and who owns them. The product may not appear cleanly in a standard scanner inventory, especially where services are managed outside the central infrastructure team. Application owners should verify remediation against SAP guidance, while defenders review recent web, application, process, and outbound network activity around those instances. There isn't a universal indicator set in the supplied material. Start broad and preserve the evidence window, because a patched service is safer, but not a retrospective investigation. Another critical RCE affects Siemens Siveillance video management servers. These systems may support physical security or critical infrastructure monitoring, so compromise could undermine trust in the surveillance environment they manage. The first snag may be ownership. The SOC may see cameras as a physical security responsibility, while the management server sits on a network segment that isn't clearly inventoried or monitored. Confirm the server list, patch status, and available telemetry. Unexpected processes, services, or outbound connections deserve attention, especially until the latest Siemens updates are verified. The reporting identifies the vulnerability but not confirmed exploitation. Suspicious behavior should carry more weight without turning every video server problem into an incident by default. Now, the shift from vulnerabilities to attacker operations. Kimsuky is reportedly running an offline AI stack to improve phishing, search its collected documents, and support malware development work. The offline choice stood out to me. It reduces dependence on public AI services and may remove provider-side logging or account controls that could expose repeated malicious use. Offline doesn't mean invisible, and polished language isn't proof that AI was involved. Defenders still need to focus on campaign behavior, tailored lures, attachment execution, changing samples, and endpoint activity. So the tooling evolves, but the investigation remains familiar. Email telemetry and malware behavior matter more than guessing which model wrote a message, and the next story moves that persuasion to the phone. UNC 6671 is calling employees on personal phones, posing as IT support, and guiding them through what sounds like a security migration. The objective is access to enterprise SaaS data, not control of the phone itself. That story works because migrations already involve urgency, unfamiliar prompts, and authentication changes. A personal call can still end with corporate credentials or an active session being handed over. If someone reports a migration call, what changed afterward? Correlate the report with SaaS sign-ins, new sessions, unfamiliar access patterns, and activity involving the targeted account. Also, identify other people who were contacted, even if they believe they disclosed nothing. Not every call succeeds, and a suspicious phone call alone isn't proof of account compromise. A Sandworm-Linked subgroup is using another believable conversation: fake job interviews with Ukrainian IT workers. The malware arrives through a malicious VPN tool and is intended to provide remote command execution. The lure fits the audience. An IT candidate may reasonably expect remote access software or a technical exercise, so the request doesn't have to look obviously malicious. Correlate recruiter-themed contact with new or unapproved VPN installations, unusual outbound connections, and authentication changes. A VPN install alone is far too common to be a useful verdict. If the target has privileged access, the foothold may be especially valuable. The reporting links the campaign to espionage and possible sabotage risk, but it doesn't establish the outcome on every affected system. Lazarus reportedly exploited a recently patched Windows 0 day to deploy a new backdoor against defense and aerospace organizations under the broader Operation Dream Job activity. Recently patched doesn't tell us whether each target was exposed or whether exploitation continued afterward. Organizations in those sectors need a clean inventory of affected Windows assets and the relevant evidence window. Dream Job is often associated with recruitment lures, but defenders shouldn't hunt only for interview files here. Review vulnerable systems for the reported backdoor indicators and abnormal process or outbound activity. Different access path, similar espionage objective. And attribution aside, a new backdoor on a defense workstation isn't an alert that should wait in a queue.
Jewelbug is reported to be compromising government and military webmail for espionage, while also conducting cryptocurrency fraud. The activity doesn't fit neatly into one motive.
But we shouldn't join every suspicious wallet event to every mailbox compromise. The group has conducted both kinds of activity. The reporting doesn't say they overlap in every victim.
Would you begin with the authentication trail? I'd review unusual sign-ins, sessions, and mailbox activity. Then test whether timing or infrastructure credibly overlaps with known financial indicators.
Exactly. Email might be a collection channel, a staging point, or an independent operation. Evidence should connect the cases before attribution or motive does.
An Akira affiliate reportedly rebooted systems into safe mode with networking, disabled EDR, and stole data. Encryption later failed, but that doesn't make the intrusion a failure.
Safe mode matters because endpoint coverage may be reduced or absent while the host remains online. The article doesn't establish why encryption failed, so the confirmed data theft deserves more attention than speculation about the ransomware stage.
Line up boot records, safe mode indicators, EDR check-in gaps, and network traffic. A reboot may look routine until it is followed by missing telemetry and unusual outbound movement.
If defenders wait only for an encryption alert, it may never arrive. Network and identity logs may have to reconstruct the period when the endpoint tool couldn't see.
More than 737 fake VPN and proxy extensions in the Chrome Web Store were reportedly routing traffic through SOC 5 proxies controlled by one entity while impersonating familiar services.
A store listing still carries trust with users, but an extension can sit directly in the path of browser traffic. The reported behavior is traffic rerouting, not proof that every user had information stolen or modified.
Start with extension inventory and browser or endpoint telemetry. Then identify VPN-themed add-ons that aren't approved. From there, proxy destinations linked to those hosts become more useful.
SOC 5 alone isn't malicious, so flow data without the extension context will be noisy. The bigger question is how many environments actually know which browser extensions are installed.
That connects directly to the previous story. Once again, trusted remote access paths become part of the attack surface. Gunra ransomware is targeting government and critical infrastructure through exposed VPN and RDP weaknesses before stealing data and encrypting systems.
What surprised me is how early the extortion problem begins. By the time encryption becomes visible, the data may already be gone, and publication threats may already be moving through Tor leak sites.
Review which VPN and RDP services are reachable, their patch status, and both failed and unusual successful authentication. Add network monitoring for outbound volume that doesn't fit the service.
Large transfers can be legitimate, and the material doesn't provide one universal Gunra signature. Context around remote access, identity, destination, and timing is what turns volume into evidence.
Personal data tied to roughly 1.6 million RingCentral accounts appeared in a breach attributed to shiny hunters. Communications platform identity data can make support impersonation and password reset lures more convincing.
Keep the scope precise. The supplied summary doesn't establish that RingCentral credentials were stolen, or that customer tenants were accessed afterward.
Identify users and shared or administrative accounts tied to the service. Review authentication and account changes, including identity provider logs where RingCentral uses single sign-on.
The disclosure provides enough reason to validate exposure, but not enough to assume every account is compromised. That distinction matters when teams are reacting before detailed tenant-level information arrives.
At first, hearing that Trezor wallets and customer funds weren't affected sounds like the end of the story. But is it? When nearly 14,000 customers had data exposed after the compromise of logistics provider Shipmonk?
Not really. The device may remain secure, while exposed customer details support much more convincing delivery, support, or account recovery phishing designed to steal a recovery phrase.
We don't have a complete field-level exposure list here, so avoid overstating it. Confirm the affected record scope and preserve vendor access and data transfer evidence.
Then, monitor support reports and email activity for follow-on targeting. The product may remain secure while the customer relationship becomes the attacker's new path.
North Carolina ports confirmed a cyber attack affecting IT systems at Wilmington, Morehead City, and the Charlotte Inland Port, with operational delays across the affected locations.
The public information doesn't identify the intrusion path, compromised systems, or direct impact on operational technology. We shouldn't turn every port cyber incident into an OT compromise.
Even an IT outage can slow cargo movement when scheduling, documentation, gate processing, or communications are unavailable. Build a timeline across authentication, network changes, system alerts, and the first operational delays.
3 locations raise questions about shared services, but don't answer them. Dependencies can spread disruption beyond the technical scope of an intrusion without proving the attack itself moved everywhere.
Google introduced HARE, an open-source compiler intended to make homomorphic encryption more practical for private AI workloads, allowing computation on encrypted data without exposing the underlying inputs in clear text.
That doesn't make every AI workflow private automatically. It improves the path toward usable implementations, while also creating an observability trade-off. Defenders may be unable to inspect content by design.
So, how do we verify that the workflow behaved correctly? Track identities, authorizations, systems invoking it, encrypted data movement, resource use, errors, and unusual volumes.
Privacy and observability pull in different directions, but they don't eliminate accountability. Even protected data still moves through an authorized workflow, and authorization leads directly to our final story.
AI delegation creates a separate risk from encryption. We can protect data during computation and still give an agent a token with broad permissions and an imprecise instruction.
A task like analyze customer issues might mean one ticket queue, or quietly expand into mail, files, CRM records, and internal tools. Broad access isn't proof of compromise, but it increases the blast radius of mistakes or abuse.
For the SOC, every agent needs an identity, a delegated user or service context, a defined task, and records of the tools and data it accessed. Otherwise, its API calls resemble ordinary service activity.
Logging alone can't establish intent. Permissions must be narrow enough to test, with alerts when an agent moves outside expected systems or data. If a deployment can't explain that path, it can't reliably investigate it either.
The common thread this week is visibility before certainty. A patch reduces exposure, but defenders still need evidence showing whether vCenter, SharePoint, SAP Commerce, or an edge device was touched beforehand.
The same applies beyond vulnerabilities. Can we connect a phone call to SaaS access, a safe mode reboot to missing EDR coverage, or an AI identity to the data and tools it used?
Pick one high-value system and test that chain this week. We collect logs isn't the same as being able to reconstruct what happened.
That's it for this edition of SOC Minute Weekly. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay informed, stay secure, and we'll see you next week.